Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis, and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903.
As a constitutional law attorney, former senior legal advisor, and personal counsel to President Donald J. Trump, Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Jenna Ellis Show. I'm Jenna Ellis, and this week started out the new term of the United States Supreme Court, and so I was planning on just going through some of the cases and what we can expect from the Supreme Court, and we'll get to that. But for today, I have to emphasize how much of a disaster Justice Ketanji Brown-Jackson is to the Supreme Court. And this is not just from a conservative Republican, oh, she's a Biden appointee sort of position. We all know that the radical leftist extremists are saying that Trump's 3 justices, of course, are illegitimate. They somehow lied in their confirmation hearings because they said what? That Roe versus Wade was currently precedent in the law of the land. That was true until it was overturned. So that's just a ridiculous argument. Not going to go there. I mean, Ketanji Brown-Jackson, of course, was confirmed to the United States Supreme Court in the constitutionally prescribed method. So unfortunately, she does have lifetime tenure on the bench, but she is a disaster because she has started Monday through today, the first week that she's on the bench as part of the United States Supreme Court, by not just participating, but getting into arguments from the bench. Her demeanor is awful. But even more than that, the perspective of interpretation of the Constitution that she is actually suggesting from the bench is, as one person called it, progressive originalism. And there is a huge danger here. So listen to this clip in the context of a case that was talking about the 14th Amendment and racial discrimination and this whole concept of equality and equal protection. Listen to what she said yesterday from the bench.
I don't think we can assume that just because race is taken into account, that necessarily creates an equal protection problem, because I understood that we looked at the history and traditions of the Constitution, at what the framers and the founders thought about. And when I drilled down to that level of analysis, it became clear to me that the framers themselves adopted the Equal Protection Clause, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment in a race-conscious way, that they were, in fact, trying to ensure that people who had been discriminated against, the freedmen, during the Reconstruction period, were actually brought equal to everyone else in the society. So I looked at the report that was submitted by the Joint Committee on Reconstruction, which drafted the 14th Amendment, and that report says that the entire point of the amendment was to secure rights of the freed former slaves, the legislator who introduced that amendment said that, quote, unless the Constitution should restrain them, those states will all, I fear, keep up this discrimination and crush to death the hated freedmen. That's not a race-neutral or race-blind idea in terms of the remedy. And even more than that, I don't think that the historical record establishes that the founders believed that race neutrality or race blindness was required, right? They drafted the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which specifically stated that citizens would have the same civil rights as enjoyed by white citizens. That's the point of that act, to make sure that the other citizens, the black citizens, would have the same as the white citizens. So they recognized that there was unequal treatment, that people based on their race were being treated unequally. And importantly, when there was a concern that the Civil Rights Act wouldn't have a constitutional foundation, that's when the 14th Amendment came into play.
Okay, so this is in the context of telling the Alabama Solicitor General her revisionist idea of this history of the 14th Amendment. And notice how she says that this was designed by the framers of the 14th Amendment to be race conscious and not to be race blind or race neutral. And so she's justifying the 14th Amendment as a Reconstruction era amendment to actually discriminate against any other races that are not black. This is how insane this justice is, by actually suggesting that the Reconstruction era amendments, which if we go back in history, are the three amendments that were ratified in the wake of the post-Civil War era. It was in order to make sure that equal protection occurred, that the freed men were to have citizenship, they were to have all rights and protections of our government the same as any other race. And so the whole idea here of equal protection is to make sure that everyone, regardless of their race, has the exact same protections, not at all to elevate one race over the rest. That's what she's suggesting here. It's the same ridiculous notion as if in the wake of the 19th Amendment, which of course said that that individuals cannot be discriminated against on the basis of sex for the purpose of voting, that was designed so that we protected the right of women to vote. That somehow now, because that was designed to make sure women can vote, that now women have more protections and have an elevated status as voters comparatively with men, or, you know, the like 67 other genders that the left thinks that you can identify as, right? The 19th Amendment was to make sure that everyone who is eligible to vote can vote and was not discriminated upon on the basis of sex, period. Not to then create these categories and these stratas of different sex and gender, because the amendment itself contemplated not discriminating on the basis of sex. So what she's doing here is trying to elevate Black people in the context of the history of the 14th Amendment and actually suggest that the amendments themselves are race conscious, and therefore, because of that history, therefore it is constitutionally permissible for the Supreme Court and laws to discriminate against races other than Blacks. I mean, so are we supposed to then go back into our history and have more and more constitutional amendments that are specifically white conscious, specifically Asian conscious, specifically, Latino conscious, or all of these other races or now genders, or, all of these other ways that individuals have immutable characteristics and or also identify as members of different communities. Apparently Joe Biden is now Puerto Rican in his own words. I mean, that's totally crazy. But it just becomes this manifest problem with constitutional interpretation that clearly she does not understand and intentionally wants to pervert the meaning of originalism and the history and context of the 14th Amendment. And this is just her first week on the bench. So she's actually suggesting that because the 14th Amendment and the Reconstruction era was race conscious in the sense of wanting to ensure that Black people in America had the same exact rights as every other race in America, then on that basis, we can now discriminate against every other race except Black people. It is taking the 14th Amendment and taking history and inverting it and perverting it. So I expect that we are going to see a lot more from Justice Ketanji Brown-Jackson that is a complete perversion and misinterpretation intentionally. This is an intentional thing that she's doing because her own progressive worldview and her understanding of what she wants to progress from the bench is going to inform this type of ideology. And she is clearly expressing it from the bench. I mean, this was an oral argument, and she's sitting there giving the Alabama Solicitor General basically what she calls a history lesson, and is telling and signaling to the rest of America, and especially the rest of the justices on the bench with her, that this is now the new history. And anyone who doesn't like that and who says, we object to that, like I'm doing right now, I'm sure that the leftists and the liberals who listen to this are going to call me racist and say, oh, well, you just have, something against Black people. Not at all. There is one race. It is the human race. And the entire idea of the Reconstruction era amendments and the whole idea of even being able to amend the Constitution at all is to create a more perfect union, so that true, genuine, equal protection is for all people, regardless of our varying diversity in characteristics. It isn't to say that we are totally race blind. I mean, I perfectly recognize that people have different age, demographic, sex, skin color, all of these things are different than me. That's fine, but that doesn't change their basic status as a human being made in the image of God that has inherent dignity and worth. That is the entire point of equal protection. It's the entire point of our founders recognizing at the very beginning in the Declaration of Independence that we are all created equal and endowed by God our Creator with certain unalienable rights. And of course, how we have then gone on in government to protect those rights for everyone, regardless of race or sex, has been more perfected up until now. So now we're in 2002, and suddenly we are getting this reversionist history from the bench that is actually suggesting that the framers of the Reconstruction era amendments intentionally designed those amendments to be so race conscious that would allow, in the text of our Constitution, racial discrimination against every other race except for Black people. That is what our newest justice on the United States Supreme Court is actually asserting and arguing and suggesting. That is incredibly dangerous for jurisprudence, and I am so grateful that we still have a majority on the Supreme Court that will reject this type of ideology. I expect some wildly brazen and completely insane dissents from Ketanji Brown-Jackson, but I hope that those will always be in the minority opinion so that we never get any sort of precedent from the Supreme Court that actually affirms what she is arguing. Because if we ever elevate one race above another, we are going back to the Civil War. The whole point is so that we have equality regardless of skin color. The whole civil rights movement was so that we could make sure that we aren't discriminating against Black people. I absolutely don't believe in discrimination on the basis of race, but I don't believe that Black people should be elevated above any other race just because there was discrimination in the past. And that is not at all a popular opinion among the leftists today. And of course, you're racist for saying that somehow all people, including me, have, because I am a white person, have reparations due to Black people because of the basis of how they were treated in this country, et cetera. And yet you have a justice on the Supreme Court, not just a politician, not just, some professor at some leftist liberal university espousing these ideas. You have an actual jurist who is suggesting this, who is saying that Black people should be treated so good in this country that the law allows for specific intentional discrimination against everyone else. That is actually racist. And we have to continue to call it out. I don't care what names people call me. I will continue to call this out, and I will continue to advocate for the original design of the US Constitution and continue to say that equal protection is so that all of us are treated equally when it comes to not being discriminated on the basis of sex, meaning man and woman, and race, meaning obviously not only the color of your skin, but also your DNA and your heritage. These are just very basic concepts. However, the left is trying to reinvent society to have specific classes that now elevate and allow for racism in this country. They are expressly wanting to codify racism in this country. And that is what Ketanji Brown-Jackson is saying from the bench. This is really, really disturbing. And I hope, like I said, that this will never be a majority opinion, because that would be going so far backward in history and applying the very same kinds of racist tendencies that we all fought against, that elevated the civil rights movement to what it has become, except we are now just substituting how Blacks were treated and saying it's okay to treat every other race that way. Racism should never, ever be contemplated in any context, but when you are intentionally discriminating against one specific race, whether it's Black or white or anything in between, that is then codifying and allowing and promoting and advocating for racism. So I had to highlight this today in just kind of a quick overview. The Supreme Court's term, of course, is incredibly important. There's going to be a lot of very important cases coming down the pike from the Supreme Court. We are just getting into this term, and it's going to be a really wildly interesting one. But have hope, because at least we do have a majority, I hope, that is still thinking of things in the correct, constitutionally appropriate way in terms of equal protection and everything else. And interestingly, in the last term, we saw that roughly 29% of all of the cases that the Supreme Court heard were unanimously decided. And so there's not quite as much of this actually even diversity among the court as the mainstream media will frame it to be. It's really only these very contentious, hot button, politically charged issues that deal with a separate ideology, like the abortion issue, like same-sex marriage, like some of these things, that then you really see the differences in how the left is willing to manipulate the interpretation of the Constitution versus the traditional conservatives who are willing to be originalists. So as we continue to have these cases argued, of course, I will be covering them from a legal and constitutional and, of course, Christian perspective here on this show. And we need to be praying for the Supreme Court, for the future of our country, because this was, I literally could not believe this when I heard this yesterday from the bench and from Ketanji Brown-Jackson. And everyone who cares about this country, cares about the Constitution, the rule of law, absolutely needs to be vocal in terms of pushing back against this and saying, absolutely not. I don't care if you call me a racist, that's false. What we are saying is that every human being, regardless of race, is still a human being made in the image of God and has inherent dignity and worth. Only the biblical Christian worldview does not have some form of inherent racism. Because if you elevate one category of people over another, then you are designating worth and value arbitrarily and on the basis of some other characteristic than simply our intrinsic humanity. And the Bible says that we are one race, one blood. God made all of us. From the moment of conception until natural death, every human being is made in the image of God, has inherent dignity and worth, and deserves the same protections of all rights, including the right to life. Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis, and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903. MyPillow is having their biggest sheet sale of the year. You all have helped build MyPillow into the amazing company that it is today. Now, Mike Lindell, the inventor and CEO, wants to give back exclusively to you, his listeners. The Percale bed sheet set is available in a variety of colors and sizes, and they are all on sale. So, for example, the queen size is regularly priced at $89.98, but is now only $39.98 with our listener promo code Jenna, Jenna. So order now, because when they're gone, they're gone. The Percale bed sheets are breathable and have a cool and crisp feel. These come with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee, so don't miss out on this incredible offer. There's a limited supply, so be sure to order now. You can call 1-800-564-8475 and use the promo code Jenna, or go to mypillow.com/Jenna. You can click on the radio listeners square and use the promo code Jenna. That's Jenna. Thank you so much to all of Mike Lindell's listeners and listeners of this podcast for making sure to support MyPillow and using our exclusive listener promo code Jenna. That's Jenna.